Hello everybody, welcome to a special episode. This is where we're going to paint Ghost. This is obviously the White Wolf from Song of Ice and Fire miniatures game. It's one of several wolves. I think you've got, I don't know if you have Shaggy Dog, but you've got Summer and, oh, what are some of the other? There's Summer and Grey Wind. They all come in a form like this. They're solos, if you don't already know. And you can do some fun things with the basing. This is just relatively plain right here. Now I've got some other bases. I'm not sure if this is gray wind or not, but yeah, I've got some logs here. We got some bodies here. I'm going to be painting some of these other ones too in other sessions, but we're just going to keep it simple for right now. And now this one is not magnetized yet, but you can see we've got a magnet here, and there's a corresponding magnet over here underneath our blue tack. Now we're going to paint this just like I've done with some of my other fur exercises. We're going to start off with some liner paints here, doing our initial glazes. So gray and blue, sepia and brown. Might even throw the red out there. So I've got the camera at a little bit of a different angle here, so that's why it's going to be hard for me to, at first, to get these jars where you can see them. So there's our off-whites, maiden flesh, maggot white. We're going to throw in a few other things. We've got green and purple. People say, what the heck's up with the green and purple? Well, green and purple make fantastic grays. And I can see some of those grays just in our two reference pictures over here. And then I see that the eyes here, well, it just kind of looks like they're glowing a little bit. And that's what we're going to do, is hopefully get ourselves a nice little glowing effect using our fluorescent orange and our clear yellow. So let's get this reduced here and out of the way. Brushes, as always, are number 8 rounds. And you can see, looks like we have 2 brushes that are kind of new and pristine. Or is that the same type of point? But oh, wait a second, we rotate this one around. Now we've got that super soft filbert brush that I'm always talking about. Most filberts are about this long or so. Now they have the curved top, but see how much softer this is, how much more give there is than a typical filbert brush. And also you can't do this with a filbert brush. So we'll be using that certainly in our initial stages along with our makeup sponges. These are just from Amazon. No big deal. Super cheap. Hundreds of them for just a few dollars. It's definitely well worth the price. So what we'll do, when we're done with the painting part of this, we're also going to grab our crushed glass and we'll do some snow effects, and maybe we'll do some blood effects here too. It's just fun to see that in the snow. So what we're going to do is we're going to get some colors out on the palette, and we'll get into our initial glazing and shaded base coats on Ghost. Let's get started with our base here. Now is movement tray. You've got gray liner, blue liner, sepia liner. That's brown liner. That's Sacred Weapon, verdigris, pale green. And there's our off-white maiden flesh. What we're going to do, just going to water down some of this. There's no specific ratio, 50, 50, 40, 60. Sometimes almost 70-80% water. Sometimes it's less. Really depends on what you need to do. I'm going to get in here and we're going to utilize those makeup sponges. So then I just do it here. This is where we're going to obviously emphasize a little more in the way of browns here. Just keep working this. Alright, like so. And remember, we've got our makeup sponges. They said, well, why did you do that whole semi-shaded primer thing and now you're just sort of wiping it all out? Well, we're not actually wiping it all out because remember, we've got our sponge here. I'm just going to back this out one step so I can get right in here. Look how it takes the paint away, but it leaves behind some of our shading. Now you also, if we're going to do snow effect, we sort of want the underlying nature of this to be, well, maybe a little darker, because that's going to show your snow that much better. It's another reason why, again, why we're going a little bit on the darker side with this. So you're getting the sepia liner in here. Followed by some of the brown liner over here. Again, if I need some more water, I just grab some. And no, there's no medium or anything like that. It's just straight up water. And part of it is I just do too many of these things to be screwing around with 10 gallons of flow improver and all this other stuff. Now, it's interesting with the sponges. Okay, they're going to get dirty fast, but you can cut them like this, just a pair of scissors. Does a couple of things. Now you've got you got a clean surface, but you got sort of a chiseled edge here, and this will be more important when we get into the other aspects of our wolf. Now, what you can also do, I'm just going to throw sort of a reddish tan color out here. I want some of this. Out here. Do I have my red line? Yeah, I am going to throw some red liner out here because I want to get some warmth on the ground area here. And that should do it. We'll mix a little bit of our sepia liner with that. I'm going to get right in here. And now see how that sort of sops that up a bit? See how it's soaking up? Because it's essentially wet into wet. Just like that. Not going to do that everywhere though. It's like we basically created sort of a mud type color. So we're going to do a few more here. Leaving obviously the rocks. Don't have to put it on those because that will give us a hint more of gray and less of mud or dirt. This is again the beauty of these craft brushes here. They just hold so much pigment, so much water. It's real easy to do something like so. And these brushes you just can't beat. Can't beat that. $5 for 12, and when they come out of the package, they're basically pristine like that, and you can do some pretty interesting detail stuff with those brushes. I'll tell you. I mostly get mine just from the Hobby Lobby website nowadays. You don't get it to the stores all that often anymore. So I think actually you can get, I think the ones in the store only have 10, so the ones online are technically sort of getting a better deal on those anyway. We're going to get back into our glaze mode here. Like this. That's all part of this initial fast and loose. You can see we're working it quick. We're not dwelling on things too long. Just kind of blasting our way right through it. Every so often switching up. Going from brown liner to sepia liner. Back to the sepia here. Got a sponge. Like so, take away some of that excess there. Now we'll go back into our mud mixture here. Once again, helping us bring out the rocks just a touch. Slightly different coloration. This red-ish mud color is also going to get us a nice difference in our snow. And I'll show you. This is another tutorial that's coming up. It's gonna be more than one episode. It's the Scorpion Builder crew. So I'm just gonna let that sit there for a second. Here we go. So you see how we've got that mud? There's how it's actually, the mud is mixed with the snow because they've been tramping around on it. We got icicle effects. This is going to be another series of videos. Probably one to show you just how I do the stakes and the basing and that sort of thing. Then at least one episode to do the painting because we got the 3 guys and the Scorpion. Might take 2. And then obviously we want to do the snow effects. So that's like at least 3 episodes on that. That's, again, it might be 2 very long episodes or just 3 breaking it down. We'll see. So we're just gonna pop ourselves a slightly lighter, there's a few patches of lighter there. And now that this has had a chance to settle up a little bit, we'll do the same right here. Couple little shots there. Now we'll get to the wolf itself, and like I said, it's just basic Stino-Res primer here. It's from Badger. You've seen me do the sort of pre-shaded type look several times. Here's some of our gray liner. I'm going to get a touch of blue in there. Why not? Now this is a little more liquid than what we used on the base, but we are going to change up the colors, going see more gray liner than more blue liner. Might even throw in a touch of sepia liner here in some places just to get some variety. I'll keep this going. I believe that Ghost is from the Night's Watch. I think it is in the starter. Yeah, the Night's Watch starter. Because I know there's a couple of heroes that bring in some wolves that have come in subsequent box set. I think the Stark Heroes 2 also comes with that might be the one that comes with Shaggy Dog. And I think Stark Heroes 1 that might have come with one of the other wolves there too, I would say. So see, I'm just taking some of this away, leaving some behind. And if we want, I've been actually starting to use gray liner to do the outer rims of things, and I'm just going to do it now just so I have a reference of how light or dark I want things to be. So I'm going to go back here to my base, and we'll just hit this real quick. It sort of looks like black anyways once it's out on the battlefield there. Their little handhold things here makes it really easy to move these puppies around. No pun intended. It's late. It's been a really long day of filming. I already filmed another tutorial. This one has already gone up for the patrons of the Patreon page, and it was painting a regular domestic dog, but still I thought that would be a little bit of an interesting prelude into this. So yeah, they've already got that one, and now see, just adding a little bit of, just throw a little bit of that in there, and now you can see how our mud actually is a little bit lighter there. Now what we're going to do is we're going to get into our wolf here, and this is where our filbert brush is going to come into play. So I'm going to take some of this maiden flesh here. Now, this is not any kind of a dry brush or whatever. Nothing like that. And what we're going to do is we're going to start to pick out some lighter areas. But we're going to let this essentially do a little bit of wet blending with those initial glazes. Now you notice I had a little green work its way in there, because if you just take nothing but straight out white, it's just, it's gonna look really boring, but that's not quite, if you look for reference pictures of even just white dogs, white wolves, whatever, they're not white. They almost have a kind of a yellowish look to them. And depending on how the light's hitting them, they can have a little more of a bluish look. And that's what this is all about, just getting a little bit of that color variety. See, we're going fast and loose. There's plenty of nice texture on this already. And you can see we're already starting to get some nice, just by default, we're starting to get a little bit of wet blending happening here. This is obviously going to be a whole lot lighter. But you notice, well, we say this all the time, what color do you not see on the palette? You don't see white. We're barely even getting into our maiden flesh off-white at this point. So I'm going to get one step closer here, just make sure everything's in focus for you. And then what we can do is we say, all right, we'll let that start to dry out a little bit. We can set that aside. Now we're going to do some of our rocks here. Again, we don't want to make things too bright, because then the snow just it's not gonna pop out the way you saw, say, on that Scorpion Builder crew. Yet there had to be a lot of dark color in there built up for that to happen. If you're wondering what basing material this is, it's just bulletin board cork. And this is something you're going to see in some future basing demos, because, well, there's plenty more miniatures that need to be based. And the wonder of bulletin board cork, it's amazing stuff, because when you break it, it just looks like rocks. It takes so little effort to have something like these little crags, and when you combine that then with just some regular gravel and fine sand, it just really takes on. See, I'll get a little more green in here. Look at how that brush kind of flees out like that. Makes it such an ideal filbert brush. See how soft we can go over the top of this? Let's grab our wolf and do some stuff on his base. Just like that. Doing the same thing that we did on the, well, for lack of a better term, the movement tray. Now there's plenty of wet paint on here still. It's nice and wet. Means we can just do more of this wet blending. And I know it seems kind of complex and scary. There's really nothing all that complex about it. It's a very useful tool. I know there's all kinds of fancy names for it. Two brush blending and this and that and the other. It's wet blending, because paint's wet and you're blending it together. I just try to keep that. I know there's always a desire for a name for something. So you always feel like you gotta come up with some kind of a catchy name. So let's see. I'll bring out a few more lights in some places. But remember, this is, for all intents and purposes, it's supposed to be a base coat. It's not supposed to be, we're not getting into any final details. For those that saw the video on painting just a regular 2D portrait of a dog, you saw, A, how much of the original underpainting was left behind and was still utilized in the final analysis of things. Here we got some bit of fur and ribs showing up there again. This is not a dry brush whatsoever. See how much paint is on there. But we don't need to struggle to get interesting shading. So where do we got that filbert brush? And we're using all the texture that's been sculpted into this. Why not? Why should we have to work so hard with the painting? Do that here too. And get down here on the legs. And you can see we're not even using the full extent of the brightness of the maiden flesh yet. Because this is still being mixed, and it's being mixed with green. Still being mixed with other colors. You can see we're just feathering some of these brush strokes. We just draw the brush across there, but the paint is, you can see it's very moist. It still flows just fine. I'm going to interrupt that process to do a few more lighter touches here on the base. They're just little white patches, that's all. Remember that whole notion of what do we want to do? Want to keep moving. Don't want to linger in one place. That's how I'm even going to go back to the movement tray part of this. You can see how we just get that paint down into the bristles of the brush. So we've basically, in 20 minutes, not only do we have our bases looking pretty tight, but we've got a decent amount of paint even on Ghost, on the figure itself. We've accentuated some of the lights and shadows. We've also imparted those just with a touch of color. It's nothing that's going to be super obvious in the final analysis of things, but it's best to get the colors. Then we're going to hit the underside of this here, get some lighter tones here. There's some parts of this that I may not focus on too heavily because it'll either just be in such shadow you'll never see it, or I have to hold it in a certain way that, well, still means you're not going to be able to see it. Just going to get the paw here. So there's a nice little basic, little bit of the shift in the color there. What I'll do is get some more colors out on the palette, maybe even something a little more yellowish. I don't think we'll get to the eyes yet. We'll do that more as a final detail type thing. So what we'll do is get that paint back out on the palette, and then we're going to start to really dive into the middle tones on our wolf here. So I mentioned that purple-green mixture. Let's show you what we're talking about here. I'm going to get a nice little spot out on the palette. So there's that verdigris. And here's just from Reaper, it's clear purple. throw this out here. It's going to do a couple of things. Here, let's mix this together here. And you can see when these two are together, it just starts to look like a gray. But depending if there's a little more purple in there, you get a different color gray. And there's a little more of a just the green in there, you get a different color gray. And like I said, it just, the eye sees it just as green, or sorry, as gray. I did an entire huge gray 5-headed dragon, and as some folks know that saw the painting process of that, it was entirely, most of it was just gray and purple being mixed together. So I'm just using this on some of the rocks. And getting down into some parts of the deeper recesses here with a little bit of that. I'm gonna grab my movement tray because we've got a few larger rocks. Might be interesting to have some of that on there. So I think if you've seen the Shades of Gray tutorial, that's another, or anything where there's just a significant amount of grays. You know, I just really enjoy the heck out of doing that. That's so much fun. But now we're going to go sort of in opposite direction. We're going to take the Maiden Flesh and some of the sepia liner. We're going to try and get some warmer tones here, especially in the face. I've just noticed that. I've painted tons of wolves and pastels and oils and even a medium that works, say, on glass and ceramic tile that you bake in the oven. So I've painted plenty of these guys, and I know that yellow is a pretty significant part of some of the fur colors. And especially in the face, sometimes almost like a deep ochre color, almost some of it almost a raw sienna. So once again, we're just working in some of these recesses here to change the tone on them a little bit. Don't want them to get too dark. Once they get too dark, well, it's then when you do your lighter highlights, it's going to be, and just no pun intended again, it's going to be very stark. Boy, it's going to be hard to avoid these. This is not expecting Pun City. That was not what I was thinking was going to happen here this late at night as I record this. It's originally going to be a live session, but for whatever reason, I don't know, maybe there was some kind of updates or something like that, but both Kathy and I, we've had weird things happen with our cameras. I had to completely change my lights around. The same lights I've been using since day one, all of a sudden, just, I don't want to go into the details because it's too boring, but I had to completely change that around. And this is basically the first miniature I've painted since that change up. And I didn't really want to be trying to fight with looking at live chats and other things, while also dealing with a whole new setup. Let's get this a tad lighter here. Might even add, remember that raw sienna I was telling you about? So get slightly more towards the red, and let's get into our face again here. And my whole idea is just ever so slightly shifting the color. See how that gets that almost a little bit more red? And guess what? It's a little bit more like some of our colors here in our mud and rocks. Speaking of which, I think the other saying that people are getting more and more familiar with is the color goes somewhere, it's got to go everywhere. We'll just hit a few of these spots. Again, that's just cork. That's bulletin board cork. The only actual original rock that's part of the miniature is this one that he's actually standing on, or she, whatever the case may be. And we just keep altering that color, making it more interesting because, and I know I keep referring to that 2D tutorial, but again, if you saw it, you saw how the underlying paint colors really made a difference. Now what I'm going to do is turn down my brightness a bit. I had it cranked up because we were adding lots of darker colors, but now that we're starting to get into the lights, we don't need that so much. And this is where we start to work things gradually lighter and lighter. I have to remember that the snow is going on here too. So when I was doing my Night's Watch unit, for those of you that, again, this was one of the Army painting. I think it was that Army painting Series 6 maybe. It was the Night's Watch. I'm starting to lose track of. I'm on Series 8 right now. I had to actually lighten the black just a little bit because next to it was going to be, well, all that snow, obviously, on the bases. And obviously anything that's like snow is going to make any color look dark. So I could just make their robes, cloaks, hair, whatever, basically make it a dark gray. And it was going to, that snow was going to make that look black. So I'm just going to let that set and dry for a little bit. And I'm going to grab that unit right here. So this again was Series 5 or 6. So you see what the snow does. It makes anything next to it just looks light. Now we're going to be doing the same kind of snow effects that we did on here. That's going to be done on our wolf as well. Now I know everybody talks about how to use only the big brushes, whatever. Well, we can use a smaller brush. Even I use the old Winsor Newton Series 7. There's a time and a place, and now's the time. And I can even start to add some lighter colors, as in actual white, because this looks very light right now, but when we bring in something like an actual pure white, that's really going to make a big difference. And there we'll get like so, just working around the mouth, and the nose is actually dark, so we're going to grab some of that gray liner. We'll get this nose here. Work in some dark around the eyes. And we'll hit the claws there too a bit. Now let's make sure we start to get the mouth incorporated in there. We can do the whiskers and all kinds of fun stuff too. I'm just going to go back to a little bit of more of a yellowish. And when the white goes over the top of this, the real white, and then you'll see why it is that we've been going some areas a little more green, some areas a little more towards the yellow. Some areas almost a bit on the reddish side. Let's get some of this fur just a touch lighter here. Working on the tail. And then what happens even after I've got some of those bright lights or whatever you want to call them, the lightest lights, I like to actually go back into the middle tones with some, a little bit of almost like a semi-glaze type of a thing. See, I'm just incorporating a little bit of the yellow into that area. That's that sepia liner. Just getting that down into some of these crevices. I might even actually mix a little bit of the purple with that too. It's just about finding as many different color variations as I can. Now I'm just going to drop these because I'm thinking I don't know, I saw those orange eyes and I might do them glowing orange. But in order to do that, we need them to be lighter. So I'm just going to get some lighter tones here in these eyes. Try and hold this where you can see it. And then we can go with the orange over the top of that. Let's see if we can't get a little bit of shading on the nose here. Just gonna move back one of those lights. Yeah, I just needed to get a little bit of a light tone there. That's what I was looking for. Get some of the underside here, some of the chest. So, pure white. Let's throw this out there. And it's immediately going to, I can see it right here on the palette. It's just so much lighter than the main photos. They'll put it right next to that, and you can see it's that much later. We'll continue to focus in on the face here. And just as I talked about on the other often mentioned episode, directional strokes really important with fur. And they just tend to spiral outward from kind of a central point. I'm going to go here. Right along the muzzle. We'll hit the ears. And start to work into what's almost not quite a lion's mane, but it's sort of that way, that sort of fur collar. And then we can start to dive into this part of it on his back here, the hackles, or her. Again, I I have to apologize for not really knowing what the genders are of all the wolves. This is another reason why I didn't want the shadows to be too dark. Now, one of my favorite things is to go back in after I've done something like this and actually throw some lighter glazes down into the shadow areas. Keep going with this addition of our whites here. All the way down. Now I could use, let's say, something like a linen white or whatever to make it more to the warm side, but we already added so much in the way of those greens and yellows and such when we were first working on this. And now see, we're gonna try to exploit some of the earlier shading that we did down the back of this. Just working in the white down into the leg here, onto the tail. All the while thinking of the flow of those directional brush strokes. And just every so often, you're not necessarily highlighting every single tiny part of it to an inch of its life. Right? Sometimes just leaving an area to be a little bit, to have a little bit of shadow in it. Even though, again, it's supposed to be white wolf, but it still needs some kind of shading. Mostly if you just want it to be interesting. There's also, remember the snow, when that hits here, that's going to change how this looks. This may end up looking darker with the snow there. And it makes sense because if you had this crystally white snow on it, and when you see animals that, whether it's a hare, an Arctic hare, or whatever, Arctic owl, snowy owl, when they're next to the snow, they usually have a tendency to look darker than the snow. And the snow is just transparent ice crystals. The animal is kind of a living sort of thing, and that makes sense why they would just be a little bit darker than their surroundings. We just want to always be aware. So I'm going to take some of that sepia liner and mix it with a bit of that white. Once again, just another slightly different color. It's, people won't look at this for, okay, each one of these sections has slightly different colors. One's a little more green, one's a little more tan. The eye has a tendency of just sort of blending things together. I'm also trying to leave. Now, again, there's stuff that I'm going to try and shade in there afterwards. You can't see. There's no way you can see me get the brush into going after the inside of this leg. I'm just going to do it real quick here. Again, you can't see it, but just going to do that while I'm here. And while I've got it also, I'm going to take just a touch of this clear yellow. We'll get that onto the eyes. Another shot of it over here. And then maybe even bled out under the fur. I know it sounds really crazy, but believe me, it makes this look so much more interesting in the end. To have all of these different tones, and was it really that hard? So we are, as far as painting goes, we're 40 some odd minutes into this, maybe about 42 minutes tops. And we painted the base, the movement tray, got an awful lot of colored work done here on Ghost. So yeah, why not? Okay, you know what? We're just gonna go in, do the eyes here too. You can see how intense the fluorescent is. Get it mixed in with a little bit of the clear yellow. Let's do some eyes here. That gives it, I mean, that's intense orange right there. That is really intense. Do the other one. And you notice I made sure there was enough dark around that to make it stand out, because you must have dark to show light. And I'm actually going to take a little bit of purple here. I know that sounds even more nuts, but it's sort of a little bit of an opposite type thing with the orange. And we're going to get that right up close in there. And I talked about actually trying to give them an expression. And that's what we're going to try and do here. See if we can't get a little bit of white into here. Up over the eyebrows there. And we've got blue liner. Get a little bit of that purple in there. Let's see if we can't get some pupils in on this. I'm trying to hold it where you can see it. Hopefully you can see this. I know it's upside down. And I'm just trying to make sure that the eyes are pointed in the same direction. That's kind of a minor detail, but it's something you're going to want to be aware of. All right. Now what I also want to do, I didn't want those just to be orange blobs, but I wanted to see where the pupils needed to be. So I'm going to try and get something, one extra level of lightness in here with the yellow and orange. That's the fluorescent orange from Vallejo mixed together. Yep, just I'm going to actually go even with a little more of just the yellow. Yeah, so that just gives it a little more depth there. Just trying to do the same thing on the other eye. Now I'm gonna have to hold this in a certain way, and I don't know if you can see it. Now let's get back into some whites here. Like that. Underside here where the mouth is. Let's see if we can't get ourselves a few little whiskers here. They sort of come in rows. Like right here. And generally what I've got to do is I put them on there and then I have to essentially kind of wipe some of them away. They always end up being too big. See, actually easier to just kind of get them on there and then take some of it away. We're going to do that here. Sometimes even doing a little bit of a glaze over the top of them, tones them down. And I'm going to get some of the green here. Purple, and we'll try and throw in some more glazes down here into some of these shadow areas. To actually turn them into more of a middle tone and less of a deep dark shadow. And now, here, we're zoomed in pretty tight on this. So that can sometimes make the focus a little more difficult. Now let's see if we can't. What I'd like to do. Now there's a couple of ways to think about it. I could either throw some of the, gloss thing or an art code or a secret weapon water effect or something over the eyes to kind of get that little bit of a highlight thing. But let's see if I can't just do that here with the brush. I'm looking to get right here. That's what I'm looking for. See that little white dot in there? That's what I was looking for. Now the other one. Let's just make sure. There we go. I think we've got that pretty well set. So what I'm going to do next Just going to get some of the snow effects out there. Get those on the base, and we'll see where we're at. See if we want to mess around with any kind of blood effects or not. So we'll be right back with some winter time. So with our paint settled and a little more dry, we're going to throw on the snow effect here just so we have something to compare to, because right now all we're comparing is a white wolf to a pretty dark base. We want to switch that around. Okay, got our crushed glass and realistic water here. Again, from Secret Weapon. A couple of things of note. It says warning contains crushed glass. Yes, that is glass. That's one of the reasons I've kept my glove on here still. It's another reason why I've got this little container thing here that's gonna let me mix those in safety, and I can just toss this thing when I'm done. And you can see here written, do not shake. It says it here, but what's your first instinct? To grab a jar and you just shake the heck out of it. You just start tossing all over the room. Don't want to do that with this stuff. So what we're going to do is I'm going to put out some of our crushed glass. And you can see this stuff's going to roll around in here. You can look at it. Here, let's make the palette camera bigger for right now. I'm going to pour this out here. And this is something that has a finite working time. It's best to not throw it all out there at once. And sometimes a little bit goes a long way. So we're going to get our water effects. You see it's all the way over here. Or realistic water, whatever. Now, this is where you're going to see the reason why I really love this as opposed to other types of water effects. Here, let's get ourselves a... Do want a clean brush and some clean water for this, because this can get dirty in a hurry. So we've got our two portions here. The more, you'll see, we're going to pull some of it over here. And now some of this into here. And the more realistic water, you can see how that looks wet and slushy. Nice and wet and slushy, but the more of the snow we get in here, see how it starts to puff up and it gets more crystalline? Well, it makes sense. You got more crushed glass in there. Right? So as we got that, you know what we're going to do is we're going to find ourselves some of our grass tufts here. And I might actually, I'm going to go with this type here. So I'm just going to throw a few quick grass tufts out here. Again, this is from Army Painter. So now that we got our snow mixed up, again, we don't want to let that sit too long. We want to get to it as fast as possible. But I also want to get a few of these tufts out here. I'm going to take my... going to go spear fishing here a little bit. Let's do the same thing. There's a few other tufts. Doesn't have to be a lot. Maybe we'll do one more, and that's it. Right inside that rock there. That's important because I like to actually throw some of the snow on top of the grass. So we've got ourselves a nice little chunk here. You can see that it's more solid because we have a little less of the water in there. So I'm just pressing that down. You can even have a fresh brush ready for that. But once it gets to be about this consistency, watch what's going to happen. See how we can actually get a little bit of snow onto our grass here. And it will actually stick there. And now see how crystalline that looks. That's just what I really love about this crushed glass method so much. It'll take some getting used to if you haven't used it before. And as I mentioned, you might not be a bad idea to have two brushes. See, this one gets kind of filled up with stuff. I'm gonna grab myself another brush here. And now this can be for sort of tamping that down in a more of an actual snow pile as opposed to just a snow, I don't know, big ice chunks sitting there. And again, the water, more watery it is, it's going to give you a whole different look. So it can look like winter's not quite here, as opposed to, oh my gosh, winter's here. Now, I almost just out of instinct wipe that with my hand. Instead, I'm going to use a sponge. Just the whole crushed glass thing. Just have to keep that in mind. So I'm going to make some more of a mix here. You can always add more of the crushed glass or whatever. Now what I like with some of my other bases where I've got the little tree branches and such, I can do icicles like you saw on the Scorpion Builder crew there. There's another couple things you can do once you get the stuff on here. You can also then just essentially pour some of the crushed glass over the top. Now this is, I believe that since this is a Night's Watch attachment, it makes sense that it would be a little bit snowier maybe. So here, we'll get some of this, some more of this, and I'll show you what I mean. I always have some smaller little containers like this. So let's push this out of the way here. Pour some crushed glass into there. And now let's set this up. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing here. I'm right-handed, so I'm not sure how well that's going to show up on camera. But I'm just, see, I'm shaking, almost like a little bit adding salt. See how that changes it a little bit? It makes the snow a little more fresh fallen, but with around the outsides of it. Makes it look a little more white. See how little pieces of crushed glass rolling around in there? And we can just dump it right in here. So, and now you have to also remember this dries. When it sets up, it starts to lighten up. You always have to sort of keep that in mind. Now we're going to do a similar thing here with our grass tufts. Throw them into a few places here. There's also just straight up winter tufts that have kind of the snow on them already. There, I'm going to throw another grass tuft right here. And maybe one in the back. Maybe of a different size, smaller one here. You can also cut these. I found that out. That was helpful. Alright. So we've got our grass tufts out there. Now, how much? Yeah, we need a little more of everything here. So we're going to throw out some more of our realistic water. And we'll make ourselves a new mix. It's best to just add this as you need it instead of starting out again with a whole huge pile of it. It's tempting to just throw out a bunch. So once again, we're going to use this as almost like a little bit of a palette knife here to just get it out onto the surface. And then we'll do our bit with the snow here on the grass. Then we'll grab our other brush here that we can use to manipulate this. Push it around. And it can be a little nerve-wracking, like I said, when you're first trying it and getting used to it. And then after a while, it starts to be fun. Here, let's get ourselves a few more flakes out here. And let's get some snow in the center here. Yeah, that's just really, I do enjoy this stuff. I've tried other snow effects. For the army painters that are watching this that have seen series 2, they know in that final episode, I think I tried 5 different combinations of materials and techniques with the snow. And I ended up, for that particular project, my favorite one was actually a combination of all these different things. These materials, some other materials you don't see here in this video. Now I'm going to throw out a little more of the realistic water here. And then a little more of my crushed glass. Like that. Just looking to fill in some spots here. And how much or how little snow you want, again, it's all up to you. Actually, I think on snow, I'm not going to do the whole blood effect thing. I think we'll maybe give that to one of the other wolves. I think there's at least, like I said, I know there's 2 more that I've got prepped, and I think there's still 1 more that I have to prep yet. So there'll be plenty of opportunities. And you've even seen some of those on some of my other videos. See me doing some of the blood effects. So let's dump a little bit of our crushed glass on here. And I'm trying to be as gentle as possible with it. And another thing you really don't want to do is, you see extra crushed glass somewhere, what you want to do is blow on it to make it go away. Just let it stick or whatever. Don't want to be blowing this stuff up into the air. So we've got ourselves some nice snow. And what I'll do is, hopefully I don't have too much crushed glass in my paint now. What we'll do is we'll grab our brush here and see what kind of modifications we might make. Here, let's throw this up here. Get some of the green back out here. I think some of the purple's still, believe it or not, still okay. Let's see what things we want to tidy up here. mostly around the legs, on the tail here. Because we've got that snow next to it now, but we have to remember that snow is going to also lighten up as it dries. It's a weird thing. It's one of those things you just have to kind of factor it in. I get some of these elements a little bit lighter here too. And the scruff, yeah, we need to get a few things cleaned up here. And this is a display piece. Well, if it's just a piece for me, I am willing to spend a lot longer. I mean, who knows? I could spend another hour on this guy tidying things up and doing some extra glazes in places. Like in the ears here, instead of just having that kind of dark gray in there, you try and get a little bit of flesh tone color almost to make it a little more semi-transparent, like you can see a little bit of the skin slash blood vessels interior wise there. That just makes the face a little more interesting. And I think we still got a little bit of our gray here. Let's see if we can on the face and the snout. Yeah, you get that a little more. And I have to decide, there's a bit of a sort of a furrowed brow here. Do I want that to be a little less noticeable? Yeah, okay, that was good. Yeah, it was definitely a good idea. Just it was making it look like it had markings where it really shouldn't have them. Now I could put snow on the wolf's back also, onto the fur. I've done it with some of the cloaks on the Night's Watch. Still not quite so positive about that. It would just be done essentially the same way I did the snow on the grass there. And as I said, you have to be a little bit patient with your snow. Like I said, takes a little while to turn whiter. See how that's starting to turn a little bit whiter as it dries. And you saw how light it was on the scorpion there. And I think those are the ranger hunters. I can never remember which is the ranger trackers and which are the ranger hunters. Here, let's get a little more light right in here. So you can see we've got enough gray there on the nose. Don't think I need to add any more in there. That all of this additional refinement that we could have played with this half an hour ago. Okay, no snow effects, no little tufts or whatever. But hey, it would have been obviously passable because some paint is better than no paint. Heck, even primer is better than no paint, especially if you do a little bit of that pre-shading type stuff. And I can even say, okay, do I want to... Yeah, so I like how I've got some gradual shading that goes into the eyes. I'm not going to mess with that too much. Not going to mess around with that too much. I'm going to find myself a few little highlights here. And then over here, I hope you can see. I know it's weird and it's hard to see. There's just lots of little different colors going on in there. Actually, now this is actually a little bit of purple, if you can believe it. And I'm just putting in here. It's a semi-glaze. It's not quite. And it's got a little bit of white in it too, so it's that semi-translucent mid-tone there. This is the type of glazing that I was telling you about, down into some of these little crevices here. So when you look at, I can see yellow, green, purple. I know it's hard to see for you guys just because of the way the lights are. And it has to be light enough for me to be able to see it. Here, let's get a little more of this. And I think we can now. We can say this accomplishes the goals that we were trying to do. Trying to get ourselves a white wolf here. And we didn't take a terribly long time to get that painted either. We were able to do a lot of interesting effects with it. We did some snow. We even did some fluorescent orange on the eyes. Just a little bit of whiskers right there. And then maybe some of these I bring out with some darker shading just for emphasis on some. Also, where some of these started to lose a little definition, we put some back in. Again, just in a semi-glazing type of a manner here. So there you have it. There's your snow and your snow. And then we can pop this off of here and we'll get it on the movement tray. Then we'll get you some photos. So I want to say thanks again for watching. I appreciate that. And if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, you might want to subscribe, because when I can, I try to do those YouTube live episodes, and they're handy because I can do some tests of things. It also lets me do more videos because I only have a certain amount of equipment and time, and I can't be rendering things and uploading things and also be doing some of the other things. So it basically lets me do almost 2 videos instead of 1 if I do the live stuff, because I don't have to do all the editing and everything else. So thanks again, and I got some more wolves coming up for you, so stay tuned for that.